Hello and welcome to episode number 3 of Midierror Meets, the monthly music podcast where we talk to a wide range of people from the music industry. This month I'm talking to Neotropic, musician, producer and singer who's released prolifically with NinjaTune Records, as well as the sub-label Entone and R&S Records. She's spent her career working with a huge range of artists, including Future Sound of London, 4Hero, and also toured with the whole NinjaTune family, including Eamon Tobin, DJ Vadim, and Cold Cuts. We sat down to talk about the history of sampling, what it was like to be a female producer in the 90s, and how she fuses film and installations with her music. So let's check it out. Where did music start for you? What were your sort of early memories of music?
Home, parents. My dad was really into quite hard rock. He was into people like Black Sabbath, Pink Floyd, Yes, a lot of kind of progressive rock, Electric Light Orchestra. He used to go to gigs quite a lot as well with my mum. My mum wasn't really into rock. I think she found it quite difficult. She was more into kind of songs like Dr. Hook. They were really like that. Neil Diamond, who, I wasn't really a fan of. But she liked John Lennon, and I kind of liked John Lennon. I wasn't a huge Beatles fan, not as a kid. I was much more interested in what was currently going on. Sundays were always kind of like when my dad would get the records out, the vinyl, we'd listen to records, put it on, because one day he'd get off a week. So we'd all have it in the house. It was great. And then school, I used to play the recorder, and I progressed and I went on to do like these competitions. So I grew up in the West Country, so we used to have these things in Cheltenham, Bath. They were kind of like Young Musician of the Year, and everybody would get up and play their respective pieces, so you'd learn classical pieces. And then I progressed onto the flute. I wanted to actually play the saxophone, but they didn't have any. So I ended up playing the flute, unfortunately. But actually, I'm kind of glad. And then ended up being in the school orchestra, which I didn't really appreciate at the time. I found it a bit kind of, okay, you got to play this piece of music and it has to be played exactly as it's been written. I found that quite difficult, so I left the orchestra and kind of gave up the flute for a while. And then I ended up in a band with my sister.
Oh, right.
She was the drummer.
Mm-hmm.
We were really bad. I mean, it was more like an experiment. But then we moved away from where we grew up, me and my sister, and we went to live in Dorset. And we ended up in a band in Dorset where she was a drummer as well, which was quite funny. Mm-hmm. And we did quite well. We were kind of a bit like Test Department. Do you remember a band called Test Department? They used to kind of weld things on stage. Not quite as bad as that.
Really?
It was quite experimental.
And things
yeah,
like
but we used a lot of... we found kind of bits of metal, and we used to hit metal. It was quite experimental, really.
That sounds cool.
And then we ended up winning a Battle of the Bands kind of for most original band, which I thought was hilarious. And we did that for a few years, and I just really got into it. And then I ended up working with a friend who was really into analog tape machines. So he used to have I think was it a 1/4-inch tape? So he used to do all the backing tracks on tape machine. And it was a bit like The Cure meets kind of Cocteau Twins. And I used to kind of wail over the top. It was great. It was really kind of... And I loved it. It was a really cool thing to do. And it really got me interested in kind of like the using of equipment that wasn't guitars or anything. Because he used to use a lot of loop pedals and stuff as well. So... And then he'd run drum machines, but he would put them on tape. So we then would just take the tape to the gig. Yeah, and it looked great. So that was kind of my first real kind of experience of using that. So it was very basic. But it was kind of interesting because we really didn't know what we were doing. But we were a bit like, that sounds quite good. Let's kind of... So we were kind of creating, I guess you'd call them songs of sorts. But they weren't really. We just were improvising a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked. So.
But I guess in doing that, you got your own sound quite quickly.
Yeah,
as a group, as a band.
It kind of really opened up the doors to kind of doing something that wasn't kind of current or popular. And I was listening to bands that were trying to do kind of things a little bit, left of field. There were bands around that were doing it, like Test Department or kind of some of the German bands and stuff, but we were kind of trying to create something that was our own.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very small community, but it had a really good music scene in Bournemouth, actually. There was a place, it was called the Third Side Club, which was kind of like the left field. There was a lot of goths that went, but that was all right. We didn't mind that. We thought it was quite good. And they were quite open to all that kind of stuff anyway. So, dark, brooding. And the music we were doing was quite dark as well. So it was fun. It was right. It was really, I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. Because you don't really have any inhibitions then, or you're not really kind of governed by, the desire to be picked up by a record label. We were never really into that. We were just like, we're just going to do this. And it was more fun than kind of anything.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to approach it, isn't it?
Yeah.
To approach it from doing what you want to do rather than doing things that you think people want to see you doing.
Because I think my sister was working in a sausage factory. I can't remember. I was working in a pub, so it wasn't like we were, we had these aspirations of being. So it was kind of funny that we just meet up a couple of times a week. And we ended up rehearsing in a kind of weird village hall. God knows what the people thought when we turned up every week.
You've talked about having journeys of your life in songs and putting those experiences into music and video and other things. What are those journeys of life, and how have they influenced the sound that you created?
It can be anything, really. Living in London is a journey, and being around certain people, but also travelling. I mean, travelling is amazing. To be able to travel and actually experience other cultures. And when I was signed to Ninja, I did tour a lot, and I did get to see some amazing places that probably not everybody would get the opportunity to go to. I went to Australia twice, toured the States, which was amazing. But on top of that, I did other things as well. Like I went to India, and a couple of years ago I spent a month living in Borneo in the jungle. So
excellent.
All those kind of things are what shape you as a human being. And I think sometimes in Western culture, we are kind of, almost like nonchalant about the things we have, which is everything's at our fingertips. You step outside of that and go and live in a place where none of that exists, or people are struggling from the day to day. It certainly humbles you and makes you look at the world in a completely different way. So for me, I think when I went to India, I was just struck by the poverty. But people were actually getting on with their lives, and they were probably some of the loveliest people I ever met. And they didn't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you just kind of take that away with you, and I'd always record everything anyway, and that's in the days before we had these, but I had a DAT machine and all the soundscapes.
High fidelity. Nice.
Yeah, so, good old DAT machine. I think I even used a mini disc, which I used to love.
Me too.
And I think I just wandered around just collecting all the sounds, and those were kind of little moments in time that I could take home and then kind of almost relive and then kind of create from that. And I think that's always been very much the way of my creating, is kind of using found sound, field recordings that I can incorporate into the kind of compositions. I never really wanted to write music for the dance floor. I was never really interested in that. Loved DJing, that kind of stuff, and being in that, but I never really wanted to make music for that. It just felt a bit, I don't know, it wasn't really me. I wanted to create something a little more, with a little more depth maybe. And I wasn't really classically trained, and I think I learnt my trade by working with other people and watching other people when I first started doing more kind of studio-based work. So I kind of would always be interested in how other people worked, and in the early days it was using samples, collecting stuff and then kind of trying to manipulate them. Sometimes it was always not always that obvious, you know. Sometimes we just slam it in there, you know. Amon Tobin would do that quite a lot, and I actually quite like what he did with a lot of the samples. But
oh God, he's done some amazing things.
I love Amon. Amon's such a beautiful guy. I mean, you know, one of the loveliest people you'll ever meet.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, he's so down to earth.
He's Brazilian, isn't he?
Yes, he is. But I think he grew up in the UK. But he was just always the sweetest. I went on tour with him a couple of times.
Did you really?
He's just so awesome. Lovely. He was just, you know, I must say, NinjaTune always had a really lovely bunch of artists. And we'd all end up going on tour buses together. So when you're spending a lot of time with people, there would be the odd moment where you'd kind of, you know, if you're spending a lot of time with people, it does get a bit like,
Yeah, I don't think there's any.
But Amon was just fantastic. I mean, in the early days, he's now a mega, you know, with all his kind of mapping and stuff. But yeah, lovely guy. You know, even people like Funky Porcini would use he was quite blatant with his sampling. I think we all were in the beginning. I think it's a bit more difficult now to get away with the samples.
I don't know. I wonder whether it is, you know, because I read in like you know, magazines, music making magazines, where there's people who are established artists who say, "Oh, we just went on YouTube, Googled this thing, and we got the sample," and clearly they haven't got it cleared by anybody. But then who's monitoring like the YouTube audio end of it? Like the PRS now have not only old tracks that people can sample, but then, you know, random videos. So
well, YouTube is a perfect example of what people do now. They just rip everything from YouTube. My publisher will not let me do that. He's anal about it because because syncing now, because a lot of my back catalogue, we're trying to sync. So I think he's now. I mean, I had to list everything in some of the previous Neotropic albums samples because, you know, we can't afford to kind of give something to, you know, HBO or something and suddenly, oh, there's a bloody big sample in there. It's not going to work.
There's been some high profile examples where people haven't cleared their samples,
and it's really important. You'll just end up in trouble. And thank God my publisher is so on it, because if he wasn't, I'd be completely. You know, I'd be like, oh yeah, just do it, you know. Yeah,
just put that in. No one will notice. It's from the 50s.
Yeah, and you just think, oh no, maybe not. So yeah, you got to be careful. So, and some people were very purist about it. I mean, Ortega and those people who kind of, you know, just made it from scratch or made it from, you know, drum machines and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Ortega live. I don't know if it was this year or last year, and it was in pitch darkness.
Oh yeah, they always do, sitting on the floor. You can't see. I don't know how anyone can see anything, but it's always very intense, their shows.
It was very intense. Yeah. But I guess going back to the found sound and stuff and recording stuff yourself, if you record it yourself, you know that it's clear and you can use it, and then you maybe have more of a connection to it being your own, don't you, than like using someone else's.
Yeah, I mean, I used to go into just like laundrette. I had a real fascination with laundrettes because I spent a lot of time in there when I first moved to London because I didn't have a washing machine. And I think there's a 12 called Laundryphonic on NinjaTune.
Yes, I saw that.
It's all sounds from the laundrette I used to go to.
Is it?
There's been this crazy South African woman that used to run it. She was a complete nutter. But I'd spend all day in there, just slot machine, recording it. It was brilliant. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, it was just like, and I kind of used that and created whole kind of pieces of music from it. So those kind of things, just the kind of everyday things that we do, I was always really fascinated by.
What would be your first memory of like sampling, using a sampler?
I used to work with this guy in Dollis Hill. It was not there anymore, unfortunately. There was a place called Jumbo Studios, and I was working there for a while, and then suddenly all these people started moving in. I was just working with this guy because I just said, oh, can I just come and hang out? And, you know, he said, well, you can do a bit of singing for me. And I said, no, actually, I want to learn how to use the equipment. He said, oh, well, if you do a bit of singing and maybe make some tea, I'll help you. I was like, oh, right, okay. It was all right, actually. He was doing a lot of kind of dub reggae and a bit of hip-hop. And so I thought, all right, I'll come in and do that. And anyway, over the months and over the years, they started putting like because it was a rehearsal studio. We used to get people like Suede coming in and a few other people.
Wow.
It was like some big bands used to come in, actually. I think Paul Weller used to come in. Anyway, and then Future Sound of London moved in, which was really amazing. So I was like, what? Because I knew Stacker Humanoid, and there was a guy from Stacker Humanoid.
God, that was such a good tune, wasn't it?
So he's moved in downstairs. I'm like, really? And then 4Hero moved in. It was just like, whoa. So Goldie was popping in every now and then. He was quite a character. So I ended up there's all this kind of new music that was going on in the building. And I happened to, we had this kind of common area where there was like a pool table and we'd make tea and coffee. And then Brian came one day and I said, oh, are you from downstairs? He said, yeah. I said, aren't you Stacker Humanoid? He said, oh yeah, how did you know that? Oh, well, did a bit of research. And we got chatting and I said, oh, so what are you doing now? He said, I've got this project called Future Sound London. I'm like, oh, really? So he said, I'm working with this guy called Gary. We've got a studio downstairs. I said, oh, can I come and have a look? He said, yeah. So I went in and they had all these samplers and stuff in there and I was like, ooh, and tape machines and I was like, ooh, and a big desk. And I was like, nice. So he said, oh, actually, we need a vocalist. I'm like, oh, really? Oh. He said, well, come and do some stuff. So he used to just sample me. He'd just get me doing really stupid things. Can you sound like a seagull? I'm like, all right. So I'm like, and things like that. So it was great because I was kind of doing these weird things with voice and I was like, this is quite fun. And then he would just sample me and then kind of time stretch it in the sampler, chop it up, get it on the keyboard. So it was all kind of, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So it really kind of inspired me because you didn't have to be kind of an amazing musician. You could kind of use, it was almost like cut things up, cut and paste. And I think they were running Cubase and I was like, it's brilliant. So I went back to the other studio I've been working in and I said, can I start maybe learning how to use the sampler? He had an MPC actually, which I never really got my head around. I wish I had because I really do like the MPC 60. Mm-hmm. It's got a good swing on it.
The swing, it's all
it's a really good swing.
Yeah, and but they even talk about that. No one even programmed swing into it. It just does it.
It just had a really good swing. But I like the fact because it had like the pads, so you could play it kind of live. Yeah, and he was a bit of a dab hand on it, the guy Hamish who had the studio. So it was good watching him make music. He often just would spend hours though on the same bit, round, where I get a bit like bored and like. So we did a few projects together and then I ended up doing more stuff with Future Sound. And they kind of inspired me to kind of just go out and do my own thing. So I was a bit nervous in the beginning because I didn't really know what I was doing. But I'd kind of taught myself how to use Cubase. I bought a little desk, little analog desk. And then I got a sampler. I just got an S1000, floppy disks. Mm-hmm. I think I had a DAT machine. I had a portable DAT machine, I think. So I just then send stuff into the sampler and then, get it in there, scroll it, cut bits out. Mm-hmm. It was great. It was a really great piece of equipment. I even took it on tour. I can't even believe I took it on tour.
They're so heavy, aren't they?
So heavy. I had to put it in a flight case. The flight case weighed more than the actual sampler. But it was great because then I could trigger all the samples and stuff live. I was a bit mad then. I don't know how they did it, but
they were pretty reliable too.
Solid. I hardly touch wood. It never crashed. It was fantastic, and I loved it for that. And it was a really good kind of way of working. It was quite primitive, but I kind of liked it, And then I didn't get too in depth. Because I know a lot of people would spend hours in there programming and doing all these weird little rolls and all that, and I never really did all of that. I was just like, I haven't got time. I want to be writing music. I want to be spending hours doing that.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get lost in the details.
Yeah, you do. And Brian, bless him, he was the kind of program head behind in the Futures because he was, he'd come from Salford. He went to Salford University, which has a really good music production. And he ended up being a lecturer there for a while as well. Oh, right. So he had a lot of knowledge. His dad also worked in Scottish TV, and his dad was a bit of a geek. So he'd kind of been around that all his life. So for me, he was kind of like pivotal in kind of making me see the future.
What was it like being a female producer in
the early days?
In the early days, yeah.
I didn't really. It's quite interesting because there's been quite a lot of attention about that. I mean, I know Grimes has brought it up quite a bit, and I do empathise with her because she brought up a couple of scenarios that I had encountered. But I think it's the way you deal with the situations, particularly when you turn up at a gig and you get a certain kind of sound engineer that would be probably been around for a while, not quite sure about what you're doing, and be quite, I don't know, dismissive. Whereas with my male kind of other bands or other artists on the tour who were male, they would get a completely different response. Or, you know, I had a few run-ins with sound engineers, live sound engineers, who were just arseholes basically, and just treated me appallingly, you know. One would be disrespectful and just like, I'd be like, it's fine, you know, it's the night, it's over, done with it. You know, I'd always make the point of saying thank you at the end of the night, even if he was an arsehole.
That's good, yeah, maintain your own composure.
Yeah, I don't want to be, you know, it's like, you know, that thing about slagging off the chef and then they spit in your food kind of thing. You know, just like, no.
It just takes all the bass out of your track.
Exactly, you don't want that to happen. But it was on the rare occasion. It wasn't all the time. I think it should always be a level playing field, regardless of your gender. And I think that's why I never went out under a name. I chose something that was kind of not really, whether it's female or male. And I think a lot of people did think I was a man until they met me. I was like, oh, you're not a man. No. And I did that for a reason. I just didn't want to get labelled. You know, there were people like Andrea Parker and, you know, Mira Calix, who were kind of doing similar things, which was great. You know, I didn't necessarily want to go, you know, here I am. You know, I wanted it to be a bit more like undercover, incognito.
Yeah,
it's much more fun.
I totally get that. Yeah, like having a bit of enigma, you know.
Yeah, I'd rather do that. I wasn't really, you know, press is great. You know, all press is good regardless of whatever they say, even if they, you know, kind of slag your record off. It doesn't matter. I mean,
is that still true? Do you think? Is that still true?
I don't know. If they've taken the time out to slag your record off, then you've got some airtime. You know what I mean? I don't care. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I think sometimes you'd get a bit like, oh, well, that was a shit review, but then you just think, well, you know, you can't please everybody all the time. Not everybody's going to love what you do.
No
so,
way.
I used to shoot a lot of Super 8. I love analog Super 8. It's
Nice.
expensive and it's very hard to get it. So unfortunately now you can't really get the films processed because they all closed down, and it was a shame. But then you used to have you could buy the film and have a little envelope included in the price of buying the film, and you'd send it off and to get it processed.
I just about remember those days with the 35mm.
And I loved it because it was such a great. I had a little clockwork Russian camera, so it was just wind up, and it was brilliant. And I took it everywhere, shoot, you know, time lapse and stuff like that. So then I put together a film.
Really? Wow, yeah, that must be
such
amazing.
a great
Time lapse with Super 8.
You just like click, 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 click. I'd be walking around and it'd be going click, click, and I put it up on a tripod and then leave it. It was great. It was, I love doing that. And then I can't. You never know quite what to expect when you get your films back, and then you just splice them all together with a little cut in with a knife, and then stick them together, and then get them put onto VHS at that time. It was quite funny.
Yeah, it's such an amazing format. I think, like, I know Super 8 from going to my nan's house and watching videos of my parents when they were young, or my mum when she was young, and even the sound of the machine.
Oh, I love that sound. Projector.
The thing that it does. Even when I hear that sound, I'm already loving whatever visuals are gonna appear. I'm gonna love them. Yeah, it's such a rich format. The colours are so strong.
I do, actually, if I go car boot sailing, which I do quite a lot, I do pick up a lot of old Super 8 films and use them. Because just use them as backdrops are great. I've got one of, like, it's called Lassie. And it's just a couple walking their dog. It's who looks like Lassie. And it's probably 1970s or something, but the colours are great.
Yeah, just they're incredible. So you've also done like a lot of visual stuff, haven't you?
Yeah, but I didn't really do any real. I've done a few kind of film courses, more editing than anything. But I just loved creating the image, because I'd always be like taking pictures and stuff like that. So, and even with artwork, I think the first album we just went out and took loads of pictures of CCTV cameras actually, which was great. So I'd always take pictures of stuff.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
then get someone to help me do the design with the artwork. I think even on La Prochaine Part I had a pull-out insert, which was actually created from a photograph that I did from. I used to have a Lomo camera, and I've still, but you could get the prints could come out. You could get little prints like this big. So I used to get them printed out in that way, and then I just made a kind of almost like decoupage or collage, and we used that as the insert. But it was of my local area. You know, I'd go around just clicking what I would do on a daily basis, like go down the market, Brick Lane on a Sunday, stuff like that. So it's kind of like an almost, you know, a documentation of that time in my life, which is great. So the music was a part of the documentation, but it's also the imagery. I think the films are also relevant as well, because a lot of the films were taken when I was on tour and sort of capturing those moments, which you know, if you had a photographic memory, it'd be great. That everybody has, but you know, being able to, I go back and look at those things sometimes. Like, oh no, that's when I was in Australia, and, you know. So
yeah, I guess it's a bit like the found sound stuff. There's so many memories that come flying back when you hear or see a fragment of it. It's more than just a feeling. You sort of, you can go back there.
Everything's so instant now. Instagram, Facebook, you know, it's all there, and literally in 5 minutes, you know, everything's up online.
Yeah, I think waiting that time when you wait for a film to be processed and not knowing which of the good pictures was the lighting right in that. I think that was the best picture I've ever taken. You know, I think that all those things is like, it's sort of character building, and there's sort of a richness to that waiting and like opening up and going, oh my god, this one.
Yeah, it's much more exciting. Everything's so instant now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, you know, doctor things, you can do things in Photoshop, which is fine, and I do like the instantness of technology now, but there is something sometimes it's quite soulless, you know. It doesn't have the depth or the, you know, like you said, when you get the film back or you get the pictures back, you're like, wow, look at that, you know. It's not quite the same.
And I think there's also parallel to that and sampling and the process of using like an old S1000 or S2000, 3000. There's something about the time that you take to like record it and then set it up and get it all working as you want it on a sampler, compared to doing it on a computer, which you can literally do in 2 or 3 seconds. I find you get such richer sound. There's something about the sounds that came from the sampler that you can sort of hear the time and effort that's gone into it.
Yeah, it's definitely you learn how to use it. You know, you could go as deep as you want with it. You know, I know some friends who would just be like, "Can you do?" I'm like, "Whoa, what did you do there?" And I say, "How did you do that?" You know, and they'd be like, "Well, you just do this, this, and this." I'm like, "Jesus, I ain't got time to be doing that." But you know, but that's what I liked about it. You could go as deep as you wanted to. It's a shame, you know. But then some of us are kind of coming back to that. You know, going back to using a lot of analog. I do work in a laptop. I still work in that, but I actually do use a lot of live instruments and kind of, you know, there is so many soft synths and stuff you can use now.
What sort of instruments do you like?
I play. It depends. It can be anything. I'm doing a lot of drums lately. It's just stuff like that, you know, creating real drum sounds using, you know, live drums, recorders, flutes, stringed instruments, just kind of using all the kind. I've collected a lot of kind of weird instruments over the years that I've kind of picked up at junk shops and, you know, I can't play any of them very well, but they're just great because you can sample them. You know, you can just record them in and then chop them up. You know, it's a bit like going out and getting fan sound. I'll just sort of noodle around for a while on something and then go, oh, that's cool. Like friend's harmonium, we borrow kind of lots of instruments. Ollie's got loads of great instruments, but he's a guitar player, so it's like brilliant, you know. he's got lots of crazy lutes and things like that. So it's great.
Dulcimers.
Yeah.
Things like that. Yeah, Mick's very much like that.
I love
You'll see
those.
later. He's got quite a collection of instruments.
Yeah. I used to have quite a bit of analog stuff, but I've kind of got rid of it over the years because I've moved around quite a lot and it's really difficult. It's like that with records. I just had to get rid of loads of records because it's just constantly moving around with vinyl.
They're so heavy.
Not the easiest thing to schlep around every time you move. I actually had a Sony Walkman the other day that I'd picked up at a car boot sale, and I just thought, I had some tapes, some cassettes, so I put it in, put it through the headphone, and put it all through a whole load of. I like guitar pedals and stuff, so I use them quite a lot, and just put them all through, and it was brilliant. It was just like, this is great, and you could slow it down on the tape machine. It's a bit battered and it's a bit noisy, a bit hissy, but I quite like that anyway.
Yeah.
So we use that live. It's fun, and I can I've got a couple of looping pedals, so I can loop the stuff, and it's great. And I like doing stuff like that.
Yeah, like physical manipulation.
Yeah, because you can do that quite easily live, and I do that a lot with vocals. I've got a Boss looping pedal which I really love. And you can just create kind of real crazy soundscapes and stuff.
I think it's more unusual now, isn't it, to be someone who has gear than to just have a laptop and an iPad or something.
I do quite like some of the apps. There are a couple of really good ones that Trunk put out a really good synth one, which is like the Radiophonic Workshop one, which is brilliant. So there are a couple of companies making interesting kind of soft synths, which I quite like, and they're quite fun to have. It's always funny when you see gigs now and it's just a bloke on a laptop. I've always been a bit like, do I like this? Do I like this? Am I being entertained? It's very difficult, Yeah. But I think there is something quite unique when you see someone up there with like a couple of pedals and he's manipulating sound. I thought, oh, that's good. I always get inspired by that. Even DJs now with laptops.
Yeah, it's like acceptable now to mix with MP3s and all that sort of stuff, which makes you the superstar DJ because you can just sync the tracks. I've known because I've done it. I've DJ'd a few times.
I've never used Traktor or anything. I've used my laptop, but I've used it kind of to come up through the channel on the CD player. But I prefer just having 2 vinyl decks.
Yeah, 1210s. You just can't beat that.
But you ask for them, and people go, "We don't have them." I'm like, "Oh Jesus."
No, it's not 12:10. It's 4:15. They don't even know what 12:10 is.
I want my vinyl.
Yeah, I did. I had a mess about with some friends a few weekends ago on some 12:10s, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
And if you get the Pioneer mixer, which has the effects on
the DJM, the DJM.
It's so brilliant, because you can put all the little delays on. It's lovely.
Yeah, and it tempo syncs, doesn't it? It'll read the BPM.
It's a really good little bit of kit, but no one seems to. A lot of the places now just have a stick. I'm going to take all my records on a stick, which I can understand.
I did hear Mike Skinner say something quite funny about the USB stick. He's like, you can't just walk around. You couldn't just go on holiday to like Ibiza and say, yeah, I'll come to your party and I'll bring my entire record collection,
one 64 gig stick.
Yeah, but if it wasn't on the stick, it would just, you actually bring your whole record collection. How unfeasible is that?
It is, and I can understand why that has become the norm.
Yeah.
There's something quite nice about playing vinyl. In the days when we all went on tour with Ninja, you'd have DJ Food and, having those 3 decks with DK, they do this kind of juggling thing. It would be amazing. I've seen so many amazing kind of DJs doing amazing things. Even watching Kid Koala just do his crazy cutting up, and it's just like, it doesn't seem to have that now. They were like superstar DJs for me because they would be up there doing amazing things.
Yeah.
And this is art.
Yeah.
But I don't see the same thing with doing that with CD things. It's weird.
There's definitely a lot more skill involved, isn't there?
Yeah, beat juggling and all that kind of stuff.
You literally, took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, beat juggling for me, even as a novice DJ, that is so much fun.
The first time you learn to actually cue something in and get it in time, the first time you do it, it's that I'm in. We're in time. I've got 2 records going up there.
Yeah, well, there was a band I was going to talk about earlier when we were talking about like visual stuff and mixing up like video and music. They're a band called Sculpture who are...
Yeah, I saw them the other night.
Did you?
For the first time, and I
Where
loved
did you
them.
see them?
Here, they played a thing called System Crash at Borough Wines.
I was there. We were there. Me and my group of friends were. Yeah, they were here.
Because they're from Brighton, aren't they? Well,
I
no,
don't
they're
know
from
where
London.
they're
No,
from.
they're from London. And I really loved the fact that he was using like flexi discs of the visuals. He was quite a kooky guy, actually. He almost looked like he'd stepped out of something like an Eisenstein film. It was weird. But I actually messaged them on their Facebook page because I said I really loved the set. Because it reminded me of Square Pusher a bit. It was quite out there.
So out there, yeah.
And he was
They're
using
very
old
talented.
tape and stuff, and it was brilliant. And he was just looping it around like a bottle, I think, at one point. It was intense.
Yeah, did you see the bit where he has the record with rocks on it or something that was generating like a ticking or...
It was brilliant.
It was 2 things because like the other guy was generating music, the guy who's just normally doing visuals, he was generating like, you know, like percussive sounds, but also on the visuals it ended up sort of looking like planets in the dark spinning around
Very
each other.
clever.
They're brilliant.
And quite kind of using a lot of old techniques, which I thought was really good. It was really refreshing, actually. I just felt that their whole kind of way they were working with old, you know, elements of what music used to be like, I thought was brilliant.
Brilliant, isn't it? But also like one guy's using tape loops and things,
I thought it was
but I
brilliant.
think he's also using like Ableton or something that's sequencing it in a future using like modern technology, but yeah, fusing it with.
But I thought it was great.
Sounds
Old and new
tape.
together. And I think that for me is what I tend to do now. So
Yeah.
it's the old kind of within the kind of new technology, which is great. I think that's a nice way of kind of, you know, harking back to the old, but then also using it in the kind of new world of technology.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But in terms of installations and stuff, you've been involved.
I've
with
done a
few
few.
installations,
I've
haven't
done
you?
I did a thing called Departure Lounge, which was using film sound and a hospital bed, which I did a few times.
What happened? What was the...
Well, because I was really ill a few years ago, and I got diagnosed with something I never thought I'd ever get, but I was in hospital for 2 weeks, really sick, and they gave me, I had the option of trying 2 trial drugs, and it was basically the lottery of which one I got. And they ended up giving me one that actually had a really bad reaction to.
Oh no.
And it made me feel like, it actually felt like I'd taken acid. And I have taken acid, so I knew what it was. I went on this weird trip for 2 days, and in the end I was begging them, take me up this stuff, it's horrible. I was in this black hole. I felt like it was just getting further and further in the black hole. So it was based on my journey in the hospital. So weirdly enough, while I was there ill, I went round and recorded stuff. So this is how I operate. Even when I'm sick, I'm pulling around a drip and recording all the sounds of the hospital. You know, the machine that they're taking my BP every 10 minutes or something. But yeah, and so I kind of went out and created a film. I also went around and took loads of photos. Well, because there were days I could go outside into the hospital grounds. So I just took weird pictures to create kind of almost like stop motion. And that's why I created the film. The film was all done on a phone, actually. I did it on a phone, which is good. Which is the first time I'd ever use a phone to kind of create. I had it at the Delaware, a couple of shows in London. It was great, and I did a show in Edinburgh as well. So.
And when you were ill, did you have the idea that... Did you know what you were going to do with that footage and with those photos?
I kind of thought, well, I want to document this. But I want to make it into something that represents... Because the room is basically all black. And the first commission I got, I almost wanted to create a kind of hospital room. So we kind of put weird lino on the floor and then we painted it in this weird clinical... And then I basically projected the visuals onto the bed. So it was almost like my imagery from my head. It was on the bed and there was no one in there. There's just a book and a pillow with an indentation because you know someone had been there. And I actually managed to get a hospital bed as well. And it's quite intense, the sound, because it's really dark and kind of, but then you can hear all these kind of me wheeling my little thing down the corridor and the kind of sound of the when you're taking your blood pressure and stuff like that. So it was just another way of kind of expressing something that was quite an intense time for me. I was really lucky, and I was just like, there were moments where I thought, I'm never going to get out of this place, but thankfully I did, and I kind of, the last week I was in there, I just wanted to get out. I was just like, I felt like I was in a prison. So,
Well, it's awesome that you made good out of that situation.
Yeah, I came out the other side, and I think I do that a lot though. I do kind of recreate kind of moments in my life through. I think a lot of artists do that. Well, I assume they do.
I think the very idea of being ill but still wanting to create art.
I know, it's a bit weird, isn't it?
No, that's not weird. I think that's brilliant, because a lot of people would be resigned to, being ill or, carry on and just get over this bit. Whereas if you're really in it, you're really feeling it and documenting it, I think that's incredible. And
I watched.
There's a lot of power in that.
Someone gave me Tarkovsky's Solaris, the original, which is like 3 hours long or something.
1972.
Yeah. It's a beautiful film.
It's an amazing
It's an
film.
intense film, and I remember I had to watch it I couldn't watch it all at once because it was so full on. I was like, I was so ill and delirious, and I was watching this film going, Jesus, this is hardcore, because it's a long film.
It is.
And then I also had The Prisoner, which I watched, which is hilarious because it's
in Portmeirion.
It's Portmeirion, and I went there as a child. My dad took me there one year because we used to go on holiday in Wales. But I remember the first time I went there, I was like, this is amazing. And then he said, oh no, there's this program called The Prisoner. So I remember watching it a bit as a kid, and then suddenly thinking, I go back on, and I watched it again, and it's completely mad, that show.
Is it?
It's completely bonkers. I mean, in a good way. But the whole kind of living in this weird kind of, he doesn't know how he got there, how he's going to he'll never be able to get out, and all these strange people. And when you're ill as well, it was like, wow, it was quite psychedelic.
I'm really connecting with this. What other films, what influences would you say you had in film?
Oh, well, Ridley Scott, I guess. I mean, then Blade Runner was pretty pivotal. First time I saw that, I was just like, whoa. And also Vangelis' soundtrack on it, it's amazing. I love the whole idea of the replicant and Decker and the whole thing with, is she a replicant or isn't she? Yeah. And I do love the whole Rutger Hauer scene at the end. I have seen things, at the end. Right? And apparently he totally improvised that.
Really?
Yeah, sort of it does. And for its time, I think it's very clever. And that opening sequence, with the big Japanese. You almost feel like you're in Tokyo. It's just fantastic. And I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing the new version with Ryan Gosling in. I'll be interested to see how it is. But yeah, it's a great film. And I think for me, on every level, visually and soundtrack-wise, I think it was a big player for me. But then also things like Koyaanisqatsi, Baraka. I love those kind of
Glass.
They're beautifully crafted. There is no real story; it's just imagery, and I love that kind of.
Was that?
I think
Francis Ford Coppola.
Who did Koyaanisqatsis?
It was Francis Ford Coppola and someone else. I think it's like George. It wasn't George Lucas, but it was someone else.
It's
who was
great.
huge.
I just
They're
love the
incredible,
whole
aren't they?
idea of watching the world, what people watching almost.
Yeah.
It's just very clever.
And even just a little bit in slow motion, and they're hammering things. And
It's just a very clever film.
they are incredible, yeah.
And then sort of in the last few years, I have discovered people like Tarkovsky, and an incredible filmmaker. I wish I'd gotten into him a lot earlier. Just his vision of things. Just what's What's the one? In fact, they've got a whole festival. They're going to have some of his films on at the Kino here.
Oh, really? Wow.
I think, is it Mirror? There's one of his films that's just fantastic. Because he's also another one that looks not only at the image, but sound.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't actually have to be anything like... There's a scene where it just keeps going back to this field and it's quite creepy. But he uses the weird sound of even the wind. And there's just like this, you know... And it's just brilliant. I just love that whole kind of way at looking at things. Very clever.
You know the bit in Solaris quite early on when he just looks at the reeds in the water?
See, he uses that a lot in other films where he goes back to nature. It's quite interesting how that happens, and I just love that.
Yeah.
There's snow in one scene. Is that in Solaris or... Because in Solaris, he keeps going back to the dog and the family, and you're kind of not sure what's going on. I'm like, where are we now? Because he keeps going back to the riverbank and and I kind of like that because it does kind of make you go, ooh, am I in the reality now, or am I in the past or the future? Very clever.
Yeah,
Very
you know,
clever
there's a few David Lynch films that are like that. Where,
I do like a bit of Lynch.
Yeah, I think the one Lost Highway for me was one that's like, wow, that really did sum up like being in a place where mentally you don't know what's true and what's not, and what's a memory and what's totally fabricated. Yeah, in Lost Highway, it's just the narrative's so messed up.
But he's like that anyway, because even if you want, Eraserhead's classic. The sound in Eraserhead is amazing.
It's so painful.
It's a creepy film, but the whole thing where you just like constantly, it's the radiator that's kind of doing that. There's that hum that sits in the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I mean, the first time I watched it, I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. And then I went back and watched it again. And I was like, actually, this is genius. And I read, I have a book where he talks about where they created the sound for that. And it wasn't Angela Balladine, it was another guy. And they created this black room to create the music, so they would get the right music, which I thought was crazy. It was like,
just total.
But he is bonkers, David Lynch.
Yeah.
I'm quite looking forward to the new Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what it's like.
Yeah, he's remaking it, isn't he?
Yeah. So yeah, people have always pushed boundaries. I do like, filmmakers who kind of also just kind of challenge you, both visually and sonically. I think it's really, I'm always really interested at the kind of sound design in films and how that's used. Even in The Man Who Fell to Earth, Nicolas Roeg, there are moments in that where the sound in that's fantastic. And I just think visually the way it kind of, when obviously David Bowie's character keeps going back to when he was living on the planet and the planet's dying, and it's just brilliant. It's just amazing. Stuff like that's just fantastic.
And if you had like any production advice for someone who is like maybe learning to make music, what would you say to them? Maybe something that you didn't know in the beginning that's been useful for you.
Get good speakers. You can buy, speakers that are decent, that aren't expensive. And, it's so difficult because I always, don't always trust your own ears, but it's also good to get input from other people. I do think, when you're mixing, I think mixing takes a long time to get right. When you're writing music, it's not always going to work. It's about learning from your mistakes. I sat in on a lot of sessions and watched people. I got a lot from that, just watching what they do with EQ and stuff like that. And the thing is, I always do is like you gauge it by kind of turning it right down, so you can just about hear it. So you can imagine what it'd be like on a radio. And if you can hear everything and nothing's poking out, you've done a good mix. Vocals are difficult to get right, to get them sitting in right. Some people like their vocals right up front. I don't. I like them to be part of the mix. And they can still have their clarity. They don't have to be up there, But then my songs don't really have that. They're not, to be sung like that anyway. So.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that you're able to like mix your vocals really well now? Like
much
exactly.
rather than other people, because I kind of know what I like and what I don't like. You kind of over the years you learn to. I do a lot of layering as well, so they need to sit. They need to sound like they're all part of the same thing. Some vocals don't like reverb, some vocals love reverb. It's all about having a good mic, invest in a good microphone. But if you're going to do vocals, look for something that's got a nice sound. I always say just go in and try stuff out. You just don't know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Ian Curtis used an SM57, which is like a drum mic.
Yeah,
and that just worked
one.
for him. Yeah.
I think, you'd be surprised. I've picked up crappy mics over the years just because I like the sound of them. And I've got an Audio Technica, which is a really old mic, and I've had it for years, but it's good. But there's so many good ones. You've got really good ribbon mics now that are cheap. You could buy a Roeg. You could buy, £4,000 or £5,000 Road mic if you want, but I'm not always saying they're the best thing. Because when you come to post or you come to add things like effects and stuff like that, if you've got a really good recording in the first place, you're not going to have to do that much. Yeah, Ninja was great. I had, for me, they were really important when I was new and not really familiar with how record companies worked, and they were still at the very beginning of their kind of, domination of an independent label. So, so I kind of grew up with, DJ Food and Amon, Mixmaster Morris was around. I think even Jason from Cinematic Orchestra used to work in the office, Herbalizer. So it was a good time, and obviously Matt and Jonathan. So, Cold Cut, which was brilliant. And they were really kind of pioneers of that whole kind of independent thing. And they used to have a night at the Blue Note, which was brilliant. Stealth and all that. It was great. I had so much fun being in the label.
Yeah,
it was a brilliant time.
And like you said, a great bunch of people as well. All really talented artists, but also
just nice people.
Yeah.
There wasn't really any egos. I never really encountered any major egos. It was always really, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Even with the Big Dada crew, the hip hop guys, which was hilarious. It was going on tour with them was just like going on one big ganja trip. It was, but it was fun,
Breakfast ready.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, morning, noon, and night. I just don't know how they did it half the time. But
practice.
Yeah, it was, I could only do it so often. I needed to kind of have my head together. But yeah, we had a laugh. Really good laugh. It'd be intense touring and gigging every night because you just get on the treadmill and you do end up in your own little bubble, the tour bubble, which is great. But yeah,
do you found that fueled creativity?
Oh yeah, totally. Even though you might not write, I mean, some of them would write, but we would do things like sometimes in rehearsals or sound checks. We'd kind of get up and play with each other and stuff like that, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. It was just because then because the great thing about what we used to do was we'd all take a stint on the merch table as well. So the fans would come in and you'd chat to all the people, sign things,
That's amazing.
It was brilliant. I mean, we did have a merch girl who came on tour with us, but we all ended up doing it anyway because it was fun. For us, it was about being normal. We weren't superstars, we're just people. And I think they actually like that. I think DJ Vadim and all those, we all did it. We all get there, It's funny. I like that. I like that aspect about it. It just made us more human.
Human, yeah.
I met some really cool people that way. Just people would come on you get at the end of the night, you get people sitting on the tour bus at the end of the night, oh, hi. And then you'd end up having big friendships and then carry on being friends with them for years. So it was brilliant.
Yeah, it sparked something.
Yeah, no, and I got a lot of friends through doing tours. Just people I met randomly at gigs and then end up keeping in contact. And then if I went back out, we'd all meet up and stuff. So it was great. It was really nice. I like that. Just kind of, I think that's the way it should work. You're not so untouchable that you whisk you away and then you don't meet anybody. I guess if you're, a mega star, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
we weren't. We were just a group of people that made music.
Yeah.
You know, big bands and it always really, you know, made my day when I found out that actually they were just a normal person. They were just really down to earth.
It's refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like, wow, not what I expected.
Awesome, great. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. No problem.
Well, thank you very much to Neotropic for taking the time to speak to me and explain what it was like to be there in the 90s and when sampling was kicking off, and about all of the foley stuff that she did. I thought it was really interesting and really candid, as well about the installations. I thought that was an incredible idea to use the illness as a way of creating artwork. I think that was amazing. Okay, next month I'm talking to someone who is in the musical theatre realm, who's had a varied career, touring with some huge artists, working in some amazing projects, and currently working as a vocal coach and MD for West End Productions. Okay, I'm midierror, this is midierror Meets, and I'll see you next time.